Hello.
I can finally hear you. Yeah, yeah. How are
Yes, it
you?
worked. It worked.
Great, great, great.
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah. Okay, great. I can hear you fine, and the video looks good. How about
Yes.
on your side?
No, it's good. I can hear it.
Okay,
Sort of
perfect.
live from. I'm actually doing this from my bedroom because it's too noisy
Okay,
in the other spaces. But the nice
okay.
thing is, right up here. Let's see if I can do that. Right there. So
Yeah.
I got that in Singapore 20 years ago when I adopted my son.
Wow,
Yeah.
wow. Yeah. How are you doing? How are you feeling? US
Uh,
seems to be getting worse, yeah?
it's pretty bad here. They're building
Yeah.
field hospitals and soccer fields, and
Wow.
the hospitals are overrun. There's a lot of deaths, and right
Yeah.
now they just issued an order in California where we're supposed to wear masks if we go out.
Right, right.
And I haven't left the house in a month, really.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's the best thing, I think, to just like stay at home. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. I just wish I could convince my kids to do that.
Yeah. They go for work?
No. Actually, they're both in college, and it's now switched to all online, and the dorms are
Okay.
closed. So,
Okay, got it. Got it. So they're
so
going more for like food and social activities, I guess.
and yeah, in the pet store, we adopted a senior dog,
Okay, okay.
and
Okay, got it.
they got hamsters. I don't know why, but
Okay.
whatever.
Okay. All right.
Keeps
So
them busy.
we're gonna, yeah, I think we already have someone join in, which is Hassan. Actually, it's gonna be a quite like, we are expecting about 8 people to join us. So I think it's fine for us to have it like more interactive and get other people to uh, come in as well.
Right.
So I'm
Like you
just
could make them
gonna,
all presenters, panelists, and then
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah, I will
yeah.
do that. Great.
It's too yeah.
And I will also, yeah, and I
Yeah,
will
good.
also, have you done a lot of these type of things?
Yes.
Okay, okay, great. Awesome.
Mostly with, I mean, I've
I,
done a lot on webinar, but mostly with just the meeting because it has a little bit more interactive features, like
okay,
the
great,
breakout rooms and that sort of stuff.
great, great. Hi, Hassan, can you hear us? I think he's on mute. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's good. And how have you been in touch with like different nonprofits in this period? Are
Oh
a lot of
yes, it's been
nonprofits
the
reaching out?
last month. It's been total pivot craziness.
Yeah,
I don't think I've ever done so many online, all of a sudden emergency,
consultations.
sessions, and
Yeah,
everybody's trying to figure out, trying to like, what do I do to work online, and how my
yeah,
event was canceled, and how do I, a lot of people aren't used to working at home, and a lot of people are freaking
yeah,
out.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
I don't know if is it like that in Singapore, or is it?
Yeah, I mean, in Singapore, I think it's pretty. So I'm actually right now in India,
Oh,
right?
okay. Well,
I'm in India
India is
right
pretty
now.
bad
Yeah,
too, isn't it?
yeah. I think it's gonna get bad. Yeah, it is. It is maybe like a month behind other countries, like maybe a month behind US. So it seems like it's gonna get bad. But when I talk to people in Singapore, I think yeah, they're taking the precautions, but like life goes on, work goes on. So people are still working maybe remotely on certain days and then going to office on other days. And yeah, I think Singapore has tackled it pretty well, like, to be honest.
Well, you have more widespread testing there, right, in Singapore? So we don't have
Yes,
that.
yes,
They're only
yes.
testing people who are like really in bad shape in the hospitals, and they're rationing the tests because the medical people don't have all the masks and everything, and it's
Yeah,
just awful. There are people,
yeah.
and in New York, they didn't have enough morgue space for all the dead bodies, and so they pulled out all the
Oh
mobile
no,
morgues that they had for 9/11, and they filled those up. So it's
oh
really,
no.
really bad here. It's
Yeah.
like, and we're supposed to get worse than Italy. So
And you're in Silicon Valley. You're in San Fran, or where are you?
yeah, I'm in Santa Clara. So we had
Santa
some
Clara.
of the first cases in the U.S. And so in our county, it's really high. So they started warning us a month ago, don't go into crowded spaces, and they progressively shut it down. And the last thing today, they just announced you have to wear a mask when you go out. And that's not,
Got it.
that's not, here in America. That's more of an Asian approach.
Yes.
So that's scary.
Yes.
All the parks are closed. All the schools are shut down. The only stores that are open are like food stores, and you can only go in. They space you out 6 feet away,
Yeah.
and they only allow a certain amount of people in the stores. You can't get grocery deliveries because
Yeah.
there's just not enough people. I mean, it's pretty dismal here.
Got it. Got it. Yeah. I think today I have sent you some questions, so we'll just go through those questions. I'm also gonna.
I have those.
Yeah.
I made talking
Yeah.
points.
Yeah. Some of these talking points, and then
Talking
we'll
points,
keep it
for whatever.
Yeah. We'll keep it casual. We keep it informal. I will also be sharing it on Facebook. So if there are people who, because I think in US it's pretty late, but in Singapore there might be people who want to tune in as well. So let me just do that on my personal profile.
Sure.
Yeah, Hassan says hi. Hassan, if you would like, you can also add in, you can unmute yourself and you can say we can hear you. Yeah, I just unmuted you, Hassan.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Hello,
Can you hear
Hassan.
me?
Yeah, now we can hear you, Hassan.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
Hello.
Hi, Asim. Hi, Beth. Good morning from Singapore.
Oh, good morning. Well, it's good evening here.
Okay. Good evening to you.
It's good. It's just wine o'clock by now, as we say in the US. It's wine o'clock.
Yeah.
Right. Yep. Okay.
So Hassan, how are things in Singapore?
Singapore, I mean, how are things? I think the numbers, the daily numbers, the last few days, they went up. Well, for Singapore, I mean, quite a lot. And then I think yesterday numbers were not released yet. The day before was like 70. So I think people coming to terms with what we call a second wave here, because previously the numbers were much lower. But I think the people are I mean, people are working from home. Social distancing, all these topics are being talked about. I think people are aware of it. There are rumors. I mean, even just this morning, someone said it's just casual talk. Oh, it's going to be a lockdown in Singapore. So I think these talks have been circulating for some time. So I mean, generally speaking, I think life goes on with all the measures in place. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people working from home. I am working in the office. I'm also almost like it is manageable. So that's what is happening right now here. Hello.
Hello. Yeah.
Yeah, I can hear you. Yes, I don't know if you could hear me just now. I think Asim has muted himself. Okay.
We could hear you. We could hear you. Again, we have some other person as well join us, and I think we'll just start. And we are very fortunate to have Beth Kanter here, who's like an amazing author, trainer, coach, and has been phenomenal force in the nonprofit sector, sharing her learnings of how to be a happy, healthy, and network nonprofit. So Beth, you speak with a lot of charities. You were just sharing earlier that in the last month or so, you've had so many online consultations. If you could share, what are some of the issues that charities are grappling with in this new world order?
So it depends on where they are in the U.S. because because we didn't have a national response to the coronavirus here, but different states stood up. And I know in California, we were kind of early on, like Seattle, and then a little bit later, New York. But when I think it was March 11th, when it was declared a pandemic, that's when everyone flipped out in a way, or got, said, not flipped out, but acknowledged this is real and we need to pay, we need to stop denying this, and our life has changed. And so the biggest change has been mandatory work at home. And so a lot of nonprofits, I was surprised because I've done this for 30 years. So it's what I've always done. But people are really grappling with, okay, so how do I work at home And if I have kids, I'm supposed to be homeschooling them because all the schools are closed. Oh, and oh, my husband or my partner is also working at home and we have a small place. How do we figure out, like, how do we get stuff done? But we're all stuck in the house and we have this like monster of this pandemic, and we don't know if we're going to get sick, and how do we protect ourselves. So there was a lot of anxiety around having to all of a sudden shift out of our comfort zones into working remotely. So that was first level. The next level is, especially for managers, how do I manage my team? How do I check in with people? How do we move? Oh, and then there was a wave of people who had events scheduled, and these were fundraisers, or there were conferences or board meetings face-to-face. Oh my God, we have to cancel these. What do we do? So there's been a lot of like pivoting at a really fast rate, and no time to like, oh, let me plan this. It's, wham. So I know I've been in emergency mode for at least 3 weeks. I've never been in so many meetings.
Okay.
And with high anxiety.
Yes. Let's start with that first part of the issues people are overcoming, right? Which is working from home. Like, how do you manage this new work environment? Would you have certain tips that you can share of what you've learned over past 30 years working from home, which would be beneficial for someone who's just started to work from home?
So there's 2 tracks. So the first track is for just for everybody adjusting to working at home. And the second track is for the managers managing a remote team. So on the first track, I would say, keep to your regular schedule. Try to like take a shower in the morning, wake up and start your work day, and try to like create a space in your home where you're working, and try to put some boundaries around your work day. And if you do have kids, be gentle with yourself. And I'll put a link in the chat at some point. There's lots of different tips you can do with, juggling kids of different ages. If you're lucky enough not to be a single parent, you have another parent. My husband and I juggle a lot between, I have a family Google Calendar with my kids are a little bit older, but I have their class schedules and my husband's meeting schedule and my meeting schedule. And we kind of like, oh, I have to be on a webinar. Can you deal with the kids if anything comes up? So there's kind of like, use your skills that you have already for managing your team and your workflows to kind of apply that to the family, which I think is, and try to like retain a regular routine of, getting showered, getting dressed, and, coming into work, and be gentle with yourself if it feels uncomfortable, because you're out of your comfort zone. For managers, I would say, and I've heard this a lot on the other side of it, value the deliverable, not the seat time. Like managers, how am I going to make sure that they're doing their work and that they're working their hours? Well, you have an agreement about what they're supposed to do. Focus on that, not that they're in front of the computer, in front of Zoom, on Zoom calls from 9 to 5, because that's not healthy. In fact, I would tell everybody to just say no to back-to-back Zoom calls. Having just been through a couple of weeks of that, it's not productive. It's not healthy. And I think we also have to learn how to work asynchronously, if I said it correctly. And that's a new thing too. We're used to sitting in meetings, right? All in the same room, making decisions. And I think with a distributed team, you have to like really set it up so people can do certain tasks on their own time.
Yeah, that's a good point. About fundraising being cancelled. How should charities think about fundraising in this new kind of world, right? And we don't know how long it's going to last.
Well, let me give you some bummer news from the US. No, maybe I won't, but I mean, there's all kind. I've been looking at all the data on this, on how long is this going to last, and I think we're going to be this way for a little bit longer. I mean, we have shelter in place now another month until May 1st, but they're also saying, but all the schools have been canceled, which would have run until June. So I don't know. I think they're saying it's going to be until we have herd immunity or population immunity, or we have a vaccine, and that's probably going to take a while. So I would not be afraid to reach out and communicate with donors, and I would be. Remember, it's about relationships and not treating them like a ATM. So you want to like show some empathy and be sensitive to donors' feelings. You want to have your organization's COVID response on what you're doing, how you're shifting, what you know, what the financial picture is, and where you're going to need their help. So I really think that's important, not to be silent, but not to be begging. I think it's first to, understand from the donor empathy, show what your plans are strategically for making the shift, and then also talk about where your needs are. And certainly the needs are going to be big. Don't be sensational or exploitative. Let them know how you're fulfilling your mission while actively dealing with the with COVID-19, and let them know what the impact of their donations are going to be.
Great. Yeah, just a shout out to the participants like Hassan, Richa. If you have any questions, feel free to type them out or just voice them out. Okay, so Beth, have you seen any successful examples of fundraisers during this period, like online fundraisers during this period?
So what I have seen are, I've read a lot of examples of different fundraising events that have been taken online from really big organizations like, I think it was Save the Children, that had some rock stars that did their concerts, but the rock stars did it in their house, to really small events and taking them online. And I'm going to put a link in the chat from Julia Campbell. She wrote this great post called 25 Ideas to Make Your Fundraising Event Virtual in an Age of Coronavirus. And there's everything from really small things to like the benefit to really larger events like conferences. And so what I would say is you're only limited by your creativity. And, there's lots of things. I've been seeing virtual happy hours, virtual coffees, bring your own dinner. And people, at least in the US, because there's this feeling like we're all in this together. And this has sort of become our culture. So it's not like you have to be embarrassed or whatever, but, and you don't have to like set the bar so high that it's going to stress everybody out. You can really do these simply, even like what we're doing now. Zoom isn't that hard to master.
Yeah.
And you can do lots of really fun kinds of fundraising events. And I just put that link in there that gives you 25 different ideas from Julia Campbell.
Great, I saw that. Definitely gonna share it around with other nonprofits. But we've been through some events and I guess in US as well as the world, I think after 9/11 crisis, 2009, financial crisis. So there have been times when we've had to face these crises as nonprofits. What are some of the lessons that you learned during those crises, which you think can be shared?
So, I think a lot about back to Katrina. I don't know if the Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans, somewhere around 2005. And I remember at that point, it wasn't standard practice to use social media for disaster responses. And everybody was kind of improvising and making it up. But a crisis kind of happens in 3 phases. There's the response phase. That's when everybody's knocked over, right? And scrambling. And we're still sort of in that now. Maybe it lasts for, I think, maybe a month or 6 weeks. I feel here in the US, it's a rolling thing because different states are at different levels. But you deal with the present situation and you manage continuity and you improvise. Then comes the recovery phase where you're learning and you emerge a little bit stronger. Some of these improvised ideas begin to scale. And then you get to the thrive stage where you're shaping the new normal and participating in this. So I think that we need to, this is a disaster that's unprecedented. We don't, and it has such a ripple effect. It's global. And it's not just our health, it's in the US, it's crashing our healthcare system and financial implications. People are out of work. It just goes on and on and on. if I even talk about it more, I'm going to get depressed and want my glass of wine right now, but I'm going to stop on that. So, so we don't know exactly how it's all going to play out, but what I have seen is that people are really coming together, and we're kind of in this together, and creativity and new ideas are really emerging. So I think that we're going to be better when we get to the other end of it. We just have to go through the bad stuff.
Yeah, I think I want to go deeper into that aspect of reinvention and that aspect of creativity. I think a lot of like jobs are going to change. We have to think about our own job scoping and like, how are we adding value in this, in this new way of doing things. And yeah, so has there been any individual or any charity that you've come across where you've seen them reinvent themselves in an inspiring way?
Okay, I think we're too soon on, honestly, I think we're too soon on that, because we're still in the, it's a grief process. And what I've noticed here in the last month, and again, I'm a little bit on the head of the curve because of being in California when we got hit sooner. It's like grief. I don't know if you've ever lost anybody or lost a person you love. A grief response is you can't concentrate, you're overwhelmed, and then you're okay, and then it comes in these kind of waves. So I'm seeing there's like collective trauma and grief that's happening, and I see it across Europe. I see it in all where we're trying to adapt to this new way of being. And some people are trying to do business as usual. And, and we have to be kind of gentle with ourselves to get past this. I think some of the signals for innovation of what could be are some of the things that I'm seeing are really people working together and giving, and just all this kind of collaboration and just from the heart without kind of the usual kind of competitiveness, which has been really great. For example, I put this crowdsourced list together. I started it with the categories, and I said, add your stuff, in the category. And all of a sudden there were like 500 people in this Google document. And then somebody else was saying, oh, this is a mess, I'm going to organize it for you. And someone else said, oh, okay, I'm going to take all the free webinars and put them in this Google spreadsheet and link it to yours. And all of a sudden, rising from the ashes, we had this amazing resource list. And then other people were coming and saying, hey, this is really great, I don't have time to research, can we just take this and put it on our website? Or can we use some of these and curate? Go ahead, take it. So use it, So there was a lot of this kind of collaborative kind of energy that was really, to me, was really inspiring. I've seen a lot of, even at the local community level here, a lot of mutual aid. We have something called Next Door. I don't know if it's global, or you might have something similar where people in a neighborhood talk. So I saw like, hey, if you're elderly and you can't get to the supermarket, let me know, I'll buy your groceries. Or somebody else saying, I don't have any hand sanitizer. And 3 other people saying, we have some, I'll drop it on your door. So there was a lot of that happening, which to me was really, really great, because usually we just see a lot of selfishness in the US and individualism, but I see a lot of that collaborative wanting to help each other.
And adding to that, this is a personal observation. I wonder if you also feel this way, which is that, most of us who are in the nonprofit sector, I think, empathy and compassion is something like, which is a big part of our identity. And as we are following the world news, as we are seeing like, what's going on, it can really take a toll on you. It can really get your spirits down. And in some ways it can affect, what you're doing at work, right? Because you have to be hopeful, you have to be positive, you have to like, help the people. So in a sense, I wonder if this is the time when almost, just like in the healthcare profession, right? Like if you want to help your patients, you almost have to have a kind of a detached view so that you don't get too emotionally drained by, seeing the suffering. So I wonder if you have any thoughts.
I do. We're supposed to be social distancing. I know it's being talked about in other companies. We're supposed to stay 6 feet away. It's really stressful when I go and walk my dog because I see someone coming down the street. Like, do I cross? Oh my God, they're getting too close. Let me run across the street. So we're supposed to be practicing social distancing, but I think we also have to practice mental distancing. And that's like, initially in the first couple of weeks, I was following everything very closely and I wanted to know every single fact. How long does the virus live on paper? Do I need to spray Lysol on the packages that are being, entered, all this like really high level of fear and paranoia. And that was because I was just consuming too much news and just wanted to see how many people died today. So now I'm just like, I'm taking like time in the morning just not to even think about it. I go out on a walk with my husband. We walk the dog and it's a COVID-free zone. And I'm trying to create little periods of that in the house when we're all stuck in the house. We're not talking about the virus. We're not obsessing about the news. And also practicing, we have to wash our hands and practice really good hygiene, but also information hygiene, because there's a lot of rumors and things that aren't really factual that are being shared. So I've had to I'm not sharing anything unless I know that it's vetted scientific information, and I'm only going to spend so much time consuming it, and I'm going to spend a lot of time meditating, taking deep breaths, stepping away. It's not that I don't care, but I can't do this 24/7.
Yeah, I love this analogy of mental distancing and information hygiene. I think that's amazing. I'm definitely going to use that. Happy, healthy nonprofits. Are there certain things which happy nonprofits or the network nonprofits are doing it? I think you gave an example of you created a Google document and you brought this community together. So these kind of things are happening more and more by network nonprofits. Is that what you're seeing?
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, I believe it's global. I have to go back and read the press release more carefully. But Giving Tuesday, which I know is in Singapore, I know it's in India, they just launched Giving Tuesday now, and they're going to do a big global day of giving and kindness on May 5th.
Oh, wow.
So they're mobilizing for that. And another really cool thing that Giving Tuesday did right off the bat was you could subscribe to it on text or email, and it was a kindness action. So every morning I've been getting a text that says your kindness action is today, do XYZ. So that's been really great. So I've seen a lot of people focusing on the positive and bringing people together within organizations. I'm seeing, and I'm really happy about this, that people are paying attention to how people are feeling and doing a lot of check-ins and giving time for people to process it. I mean, the first week, I couldn't have a meeting without spending half of it, everyone talking about what their fears were or they're concerned about their elderly parents and we made space for that. So I think it was important. And yeah, I see what Hassan's saying, reaching out to people. There's actually a strategy called Tend and Friend, and that's a way of coping. Check in with people, check in with your family, check in with your neighbors. I just today, I got a written letter from one of my nonprofit colleagues, because she posted on Facebook, if you would like, I'm writing letters, I got these great cards, DM me your address. And she wrote this beautiful note to me, and then in the end said, don't write back to me, but reach out to 5 other colleagues and write an appreciation letter. So I just thought that was really cool. I see a lot of stuff like that happening.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and professionally, as I think this is something which Hassan is also sharing, is that there might be more frustration at work. There are worries about economic downturn. There might be people who are struggling, taking care of their parents who might be high risk groups. Yeah, and kind of managing that professionalism of getting things done while at the same time respecting the human and responsibilities individuals on the team have to address, during this period. They have to take care of their families and their loved ones. How do you kind of balance those?
Yeah, that's really important. And I think like everywhere I've been, with every organization I've had contact with, and I've been interacting with a lot of people, we're being gentle with ourselves. It's okay not to be okay. We're not slacking off or making excuses for not getting things done. This is a trauma, and we have to like work through that. And some people want to carry on as business as usual and let's get things done and keep themselves busy with work. And that's a coping mechanism, but they can't lay that. I don't think as a manager, I don't think you can impose that on other people right now. You have to balance being directive and being command and control with also having a lot of empathy for where people are. And, it's just so hard all around, one thing where I was on a call 5 weeks ago with a large NGO from Italy. And it was right when they were probably where we are now. And we were talking about, we're actually, there were 100 consultants on the call, and it was kind of a fishbowl consult with this big organization, and talking about how their headquarters were shut down and their programs are really important in developing countries, and the whole supply chain had been like paused. And so they were in that like scramble to get operations going. And these were like some of the senior leaders there, and they started with just a little update on what was happening. And you could see that they were like holding back tears because it was just so like incredible. And you just had to like make space for that. Also, while we need to get this going and keep going. So you need to make space for the feelings around this, as well as keeping some consistency and continuity of work.
Yeah, and I think it plays even bigger role if you are a remote team across different countries, because every country is going through different level of crisis, right? Like if you compare someone who's in Italy and Spain versus maybe they are at different rates of like pandemic, right? And
we have that here in the US. It's in the US too,
yeah,
in different states. Not all states have a shelter in place order, and there's different levels of strictness and different levels of people taking it seriously. So we just have to have a lot of empathy.
And I think I also want to go a little bit deeper on this thing about people losing their livelihood, right? So there's a lot of people who, in some ways, I read being in a lockdown is a privilege, right? Like not everyone has the means to actually be in a lockdown. And I wonder what are some effective approaches in which people who are most vulnerable can be helped, keeping social distancing in mind, keeping that you also want to make sure your people and your organization members are safe as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big scramble right now. It's been, well, I'll tell you one story, a happy story, because there's some really sad stories. But so this was about a month ago, my kids have always wanted a dog, and I always said no. And so when so I thought, well, this would be good for them because they've always wanted it, and the dogs are really great. Let's adopt a senior dog from an animal rescue, because look, we have to take, the animals are going to be stuck there, and can the volunteers and can the people at the shelter take care of them? And so we put in an application. Instead of meeting the dog in person, we had to do it over the internet, over a Zoom call. We decided, okay, we're going to get them. And they did the handoff. We're all wearing masks. We had to stay social distance. They let the dog come to us. So it was a safe, adoption protocol. And so we're able, so the shelters are adapting in that way. And there's still a big plea for, to adopt more animals, because it's really hard for enough staff to get to the shelter. And,
Yeah.
and they're doing a great job of fundraising and, getting support for that.
Yeah.
I mean, just here, in the US, we have a lot like, there's the people that work for Amazon and that work in the grocery stores, and healthcare workers, they're demanding hazard pay because they're at more risk of being exposed. And there was even a walkout, a sick out at Whole Foods, at one of the grocery store chains. And in the US, we've just passed a big aid bill called the CARE Act that's going to take care, a lot of small businesses have, like restaurants have had to close. They're doing takeout, they're allowed to do that, but a lot of 90% of their staff have been laid off. In some restaurants actually have shifted into food kitchens to be able to feed people, because in the US, like in some areas, kids would get their free lunch from school. Schools have been closed, so they're providing food for needy families. It's hard to get the food. Pantries are beginning to put in safe protocols for volunteers, but volunteers can't go out and work, so they're on reduced shifts. So it's just this cascading, ripple effect that's happening. It's not just the people getting sick and dying and the horrible things that are happening in the healthcare system, but it's the ripple effect. And that's going to be, we're going to have to deal with that over the next couple of years and look towards recovery.
Yeah. I actually want to go back to something Hassan mentioned. And this is also maybe a little bit cultural driven, which is, in a lot of professions, bottling up emotions and not sharing, the grief you're going through or the uncertainty and fear you're going through, because you don't want to look unprofessional. You don't want to sound weak. You don't want to be making excuses, right? Like you don't want other people to say that, we are all facing the same issues. Why are you being more sensitive? Why are you being more vulnerable when everyone else is like, keeping up with the speed, right? So I think there's a balance here, right? Because you don't want to give people an excuse to not change. You don't want people to, come up with an excuse and say that, I don't want to change. And some people have that mindset. And then there are other people who have this mindset that, hey, we need to treat each other with kindness and patience and empathy. And how do you balance that? Because it feels like that's going to be very tricky.
I think it's actually a good thing that we're being more human, because we're going to have to do this because we're going to be communicating like this, and we see it on the TV, and I see it and it's not like a human interaction. And so I just really think, it's my opinion, that we need to ask ourselves, what sense of normal are we giving up today? Like things like, being on calls and having kids interrupt, or dogs are, interrupt, or a cat walk across the screen, or be able to look at, oh, look at your background. Oh, look at, by the way, that's my picture photo, a great painting I got in Singapore 20 years ago. But I think it's actually kind of cool. If I don't think it's unprofessional, wow, we get to know you as a human,
Yeah.
So I really think that we need, our norms are going to change. And I think that'll be for the better, that we're going to be a little bit more human.
Yeah, I almost for the first time, we are all with such intensity, everyone in the world is trying to solve the same problem. It's in some ways kind of united the human race to, combat coronavirus, right? And you have that sense of solidarity amongst everyone, right? Companies want to help charities, governments are trying to support businesses and charities, and so everyone is trying to do their part to solve this crisis. So that's a good feeling.
Yes, yeah, the feeling that we're all in this together. It'll be an equalizer in a way, and maybe it will get rid of some of the bad power dynamics that are in the world, or at least I'm sure they're all over the world, and so it puts us on an equal field.
I want to go back to some of the messaging that nonprofits should consider. And I was thinking that there are different stakeholders we are talking about, right? We are talking about your board members, we're talking about volunteers, your corporate donors, your monthly donors. Do you think there's a need to be sending out different messaging to all these stakeholders?
That's a really good question. I have seen on the list that I shared, there's a lot of advice going on how to communicate in a crisis. I think in general, you do need to communicate. I think also that getting back to the empathy piece and also having what your strategic response is and making it clear around how you're continuing to uphold your mission, but you may be kind of tweaking some of your programs and what your needs are to be able to serve your community and what some of the results are going to be are really important. I mean, at a board, it's like different. I mean, I'm on 2 boards, and we had to go through some really difficult decision-making around canceling programs and take a look at what the financial implications were for that and figuring out how to pivot, all of that, and I think in both cases, we had really good CEOs who were able to lay out what, we need, if we have to cancel, and because we have to cancel, these are the financial implications, and here's how we can mitigate them. I mean, that was kind of at the board level. At the donor level, and all these different donors are talking about, this is our corona response. This is how we want, this is how we're making it safe for our employees and for the people we're serving. This is how we're going to continue to serve. These are the kinds of changes we're doing in order to serve our stakeholders with these results. And these are our needs.
How does the nonprofit world look like post-coronavirus crisis?
I think it's, I think we're going to have less duplicative types of organizations. I think there's going to be more kind of collaborative networks like in your part of the world. So maybe we'll look a little bit more like India and Singapore, where there's a little bit more collaboration and working and kind of working in networks and mutual aid, I hope. And maybe it's a good thing for the US to lose some of that American individualism.
Any last piece of advice you have, Beth, we have a question here from Richa, which is, how are nonprofits shifting away from their core focus areas to serving the changing needs right now?
I mean, that's like, it's hard to answer that in the abstract because different organizations will have different needs and different constituents. But like one big shift thing is like, how do we, like, it's been I've worked with nonprofits for many years around digital transformation. There's always been that resistance to it. And now it's like, oh my God, we need to like go digital fast. So that's where a lot of the change is happening, is how do we make all of this virtual and do it well and do it without a lot of planning, and get out of our, we're out of our comfort zone. So how do we scramble really quickly, get past the fear, get to learning and get to thriving, and also being able to really pivot. I mean, just thinking about, okay, so these were the organizational priorities pre-COVID. Those don't make sense now. So what do we, how do we need to adapt, and having those adaptation skills, which requires improvisation, testing, experimentation, and learning. Not all nonprofits are really good at. So they're going to have to like get competencies in those skills.
Yeah. Sorry, can I jump in really quickly, Asim?
Sure.
Thanks for that, Beth. I guess, that makes sense. I guess the spirit of my question was really to understand, in these next few weeks or next couple of months where the need is so dire, there are some corporations, for example, Zara has turned its manufacturing plants to produce more masks and protective gear for healthcare workers. So in that light, is there a world are things happening where nonprofits are switching away from whatever their core focus areas may be to bring together resources and people to serve whatever the need of the day may be.
Well, in the healthcare industry, I've seen some things, really interesting models around that, what you're talking about, because right now that's what the emergency need is right now. There's not enough medical masks, protective gear, so that care workers can do their job and not like die from exposure to this virus. And so from the US, I've seen, and maybe you have it happening, I don't know, are you in Singapore or India? Singapore?
I am in Singapore currently. I used to be in the States until a few months ago.
So we've seen sewing circles because they're making cloth masks. I've seen open source medical supplies. It started as a spreadsheet where they're repurposing, what they're trying to figure out, like, what can be, like, can they use 3D printers to print the protective shields? So I've seen that. And those have been from, groups of geeks doing it to like businesses repurposing their their 3D printers and making these supplies. I've seen there's a site now called peer-to-peer mask donations where it's like a dating app almost. It's like the healthcare workers and people who want to donate masks are hooking up and they're donating their masks. I've seen self-organizing spreadsheets where you could go now. There's a whole like master directory of different hospitals in different states. And if you're a business or an individual and you want to donate masks, you can do that. We've seen all the big corporations like Facebook here in Silicon Valley. They had a stash of 750,095 masks because of the wildfires. So they donated their masks. So I've seen people rising to the occasion, businesses, individuals, nonprofits have been, like, for example, homelessness. They're in danger here, and so they've been, mobilizing to get homeless people off the streets and into hotels and getting them housed so that they're not in danger of contracting and spreading the virus. So I've seen, lots of different examples. I've seen restaurants being repurposed into centralized kitchens to provide food for people. Somebody was just telling me this morning that they're in a fairly nice neighborhood, middle class neighborhood that's outside of Washington, D.C. And it was a boutique, I don't know, farm to table butcher store. And during the day, what they're doing is they've had to lay off most of their staff, but they're doing takeout. And during the day, they do takeout that gives to families that don't have food. And then in the evening, they do their regular takeout to their customers. So I've seen businesses pivot. Restaurants now have become drive-by grocery stores. This one just in Silicon Valley, they totally retooled, and you could put your order online and drive by, and they'll put the food in your, in your trunk. It's contactless. So, so right now there's a lot of improvisation happening in response to great needs.
But I would also add to that, and so Richard, that's an amazing question. And Beth, I would also add to that a lot of times, like nonprofits might not think of digital transformation as like a core focus area. And I think no CEO or like CIO or board member has been able to create this kind of transformation as coronavirus.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So one is digital transformation, and the other one is every charity now has an opportunity to become like a media and a storytelling house, right? Because this is an opportunity again to do these kind of webinars and do these kind of sessions where you can share about your work.
Absolutely. So yes, I like how you said that. There's not been this has been very motivating. So I've had it's really interesting to me to, I've done virtual work for a really long time. And so I would say to clients, why don't we just do this as a virtual meeting? No, we have to meet face to face. And now it's like, oh my God, we have to do this virtually. How do I do it? There's just been a huge shift.
That's great. We have another 15 minutes or so. If anyone who's attending, I'm talking to you, Hassan, Katya, and Richa. If you have any questions for the remaining 10-15 minutes, please feel free to jump in. You guys are on mute. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess, another thing that's been top of mind for me, and I would love to get your views, Beth, is what's being done, or how are we going to cope with people who are losing their jobs, especially in countries like US, where job loss also means loss of healthcare. And so the reason why they're losing their jobs, if they do fall ill, they can't even get healthcare access. So is there something being done? What's happening there?
Okay, so we've just passed something in the US called the CARE Act, and it's like $1 trillion aid package. And I know the nonprofit sector, there was a lot of lobbying. A lot of it included unemployment benefits, and for people who are also part of the gig economy, small business loans, a whole huge big aid package. And there was a lot of lobbying to get nonprofits included, and they were. So nonprofits are then eligible to apply for some of this aid as a result of having to to prevent laying off staff, or to get different types of operational loans, to be able to continue serving their communities. So it's like the biggest aid package that's been passed ever. And it's really complex, and it has to be implemented pretty quickly. So I think the National Council of Nonprofits in the US, they just released an analysis of it, and are having webinars, kind of educating the nonprofit sector about how do you fill out the different applications, and where do you, what should you apply for. So there is some government aid on its way that will help people in the nonprofit sector and the organizations.
Okay, that's I mean, I know about the CARE Act, and a lot of the feedback that I've read and heard so far is that it's not going to be sufficient. It may not go to the right people, and
exactly. And the same thing with how funders are mobilizing too. Coming together and trying to figure out like where, there's all kinds of debates that are happening. I don't want to get too depressed about it, but things like, okay, so if the stock markets took a hit, that means their endowments are like going down, which means the amount that they have to donate is less. Do they, give out more now and then sunset? Or, lots of debates around that, or how to, and some foundations are shifting to being more flexible with, existing grants that have been given. Like, okay, so this project that we funded you for 6 months ago, like that may not be relevant right now. Let's be able to shift that into maybe general operations or something else that is really more mission critical at this point. So we're not, no, I would say I'm not like, I don't have my rose-colored glasses on. I've read frames here, but, it's still, there's a lot of criticism of what's out there, and definitely it's not going to be enough, and we're going to be headed for some kind of bumpy times. But I don't think the world's ending yet, right?
Not yet.
Not yet. Like, I was just talking with a colleague of mine. We were supposed to be publishing our paper on artificial intelligence and scaling generosity, and of course, just about to hit publish, and then this happened, and I was just having a conversation with my co-author, and I said, I just can't concentrate on this. I know we need to like rethink some of the things we wrote in this. I just can't concentrate right now. And it was a text conversation, and she texted me back and said, don't worry, you shouldn't be able to concentrate now. The world's coming to an end. Jokingly, she said that. So I think we're still like in the stage of grappling with the grief of like what's happening, what's happening to us and how our world's going to be changed.
Beth, Yes, go ahead.
There's like, I shared this little graphic I found, and it was kind of like different stages that we go through. And one is the fear and anxiety. And then the next is the learning. And then the next is the thriving. So I am all over the place. So right now, a lot of us we're still like, oh my God, what is this? What are we dealing with? What is this? We can't even imagine sometimes what the positive might be. And then we shift and say, yes, we're going to get there. It could be better at the end of this, but we know that we have this unimaginable, slow moving disaster that's going to unfold. That's not just a healthcare disaster. It's going to have major rippling effects. So we have to kind of navigate through that and try to be positive without being Pollyannas.
Yeah. Beth, this is if you could send a message to every person on the planet, what would that message be?
I don't know if it would be everybody on the planet, but I would say everybody in the nonprofit sector that in every bad situation, there is a blessing. And we have to just keep on looking for the blessings in this. In my neighborhood here, there's a lot of parents that are at home, either working or they're unemployed and they have young children. And they started this hashtag called Chalk the Sidewalks. And so I guess when you go so crazy with your young kids in the house, you go outside and you draw rainbows with colored chalk on the sidewalks, and you leave them outside on your sidewalk. And then other parents with their kids that are walking around, they play a game of counting the rainbows. So it's kind of like, what rainbow can you spot today? And we just keep on counting our rainbows.
Yeah, good way to end this. Which rainbow can you count today, right? Because there are always certain silver linings. There's always something to be grateful for. And
yes.
I think that's a great way to be grateful for what is happening, while at the same time doing your best to improve the world, improve our communities, improve things.
Yes.
That's great. Yeah, I think that's about it. I feel like we had a very great conversation. I really enjoy talking to you, Beth. You're so full of amazing energy and intellect, and you're the person I definitely look forward to, talking to you in times like these. And be safe, and wish all the best to you, your loved ones. And thanks to Hassan, Richa, and Katya for being part of this. We really enjoyed talking with you guys as well.
Great. Stay safe. Stay healthy.
Yeah, stay safe, everyone. Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.